Well, all right. For episode 3, we're going to be changing species and also generations of the interviewee. It's going to be kind of fun, kind of different than what the first 2 were. I'm getting a little smarter, I can tell you that, because instead of Mom calling me or slipping in the back door, I just had her come on up and sit down with me this time because I knew she knew I was going to be recording. And Rosie, are you there?
I'm here.
How come I get all these snaps wanting you? They say they'd rather hear you than me or Juro or Dean or anybody else. I don't understand this.
I guess I don't understand it either because I think I've got a horrible voice.
Oh, well, I don't think
I kind of sound like Minnie Pearl.
Like, yeah, I understand that statement, but I'm afraid the last third of my age of listeners probably will have to Google Minnie Pearl, but those were some good old days. Was that the back door?
Yeah, I think it was.
Hello?
Hey, Brad?
Yeah, Dad.
What in the world did you do with the saw now?
The electric one or the hand saw?
The electric saw?
It's down at the barn. I was cutting tin with it.
Well, for crying out loud, Brad, can't you ever bring anything back?
Well, I wasn't done with it, but I'll go get it here in a second. You wouldn't mind sitting down here for a little bit, would you?
Oh, you got some coffee?
I got coffee, I got donuts, I got whatever you want, because we was going to talk about back in the 80s when we were in the hog business. You up for that?
Oh, yeah. I started a long time before that. In fact, Brad, come March the 1st next year, I will have been on this same old hill for 80 years consecutively.
Holy buckets.
Now, I got to take that back. I got me a new bride in 55, and we lived over half a mile on the other hill on the farm. So.
Oh, that's right. You did.
But nevertheless, I've seen a big old change in this 80 years.
I bet you have. Yeah, things got a little hairy there in the 80s, and let's talk about how we got in the swine industry.
Well, of course, every year we had to sit down and make out a plan and go for the year's production. Mm-hmm. And after we done that, I was told to go to the main office where I was borrowing, and they would deal with the loan situation. When I got there, I heard these words: "We think you will pay out, so we want to close you out. You've got 30 days to pay us off."
I remember those days too well. In other words, foreclosure is the ugly word that they use, right?
That was it.
What year was that?
I think that was 83 or 4.
So I was, I think you're right, because I was a senior in high school. All right, so I remember those days. Kind of seems to me like they come in and load up all the machinery. And let's see, did you have some hogs then?
Yeah, we had about 40 head of sows that we used. That was our cash flow. Mm-hmm. And that's what hogs has always been. There's an old saying saying that hogs pay off the mortgage. Mm-hmm. And so whenever we lost the sows, we lost our cash flow. We had no income. And
you had cattle on top of that too, though, on top of the hogs.
We had cattle. This was a big thing that happened. Agriculture was involved in diversification. You had cows, you had feedlot cattle, you had hogs, you had crops, you had it all. Mm-hmm. And then corporations began to get into the situation, and specialization was the main thought on everybody's mind, and that done away with the family farm, and everybody had to go that route. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, to get back to it, we went to Lamona Farms, and I think, as I remember, we let at least 20 sows off of them, and we would take the sows and take them back, the sows, after we weaned the pigs, and I can't remember what percentage that we had to give them, but we gave them some pigs. Mm-hmm. And anyhow, I had enough to get a little cash flow and save back another 20 head of gilts, and that's where we started over in the hog business.
Now, so after they foreclosed, you went to Lamoni Farms, which is 45 minutes away, and they basically give you some lease gilts without having to put any money down. You farrowed those. That's how you got back on your feet after the 80s farm crisis.
That's correct. And there again, hogs served as a cash flow element.
Right. And by that you mean you could take feeder pigs to the Hummus and Sale Barn.
Right.
And you could take fat hogs to IBP over at Promise City or down to Canesville or even to the Sale Barn again.
Yeah, not only that, you can divide them up into different time time slots to where it gave you, when you run out of money, you go take a load of hogs to town.
Yeah, exactly. And that, that just doesn't exist anymore, basically. I mean, there's either show pigs or there's big confinements, and there's really there's no, very few family farms. I mean, I remember there used to be a lot of dirt hogs too, where they just turn them loose in huts out in the dirt pasture and electric fence them in and try and not get killed gathering up the pigs a weaning.
Yeah.
And I can remember I would have been, like I said, 17, 18, 19 years old at the time. I remember our farrowing house. It was not very nice, was it? It wasn't, Mom.
Oh my, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, it was. Just tell them about how we farrowed in the wintertime.
Oh, it was cold. I mean, it was very cold. We had heat bulbs. We had 5 crates on one side of the barn and 5 crates on the south side of the barn. And Marvin took care of the south and I took care of the north. And it was so cold and we didn't want to lose any. So we decided that we would sleep with them.
Sleep with the sows while they're pigging.
Sleep with the sows while they're pigging. Mm-hmm. And so Marvin had a big old felt, kind of like tent cover.
I remember that. I think it was what they used to put down before they dumped gravel down.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think it was that felt material.
And so we covered all the crates with that.
Made a tent out of it.
Made a tent.
Kept the body heat in, yeah.
And so I laid on one side of the sow under the heat bulb and watched for her to pig so we wouldn't lose any. Marvin.
Well, people might be saying, well, why didn't they just get an LB White heater? And
we didn't have any money.
We were broke.
We were broke. And so, you know what, Brad? It was rough because we lived on $4,000 that year.
$4,000 the whole year?
The whole year.
Oh, my.
We milked. I made butter. We made cottage cheese.
I remember you making butter.
You know what? It was fun.
You look back on it, and it was fun. Yeah, you're right.
We just made fun out of it so we could be happy together.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
You can be surprised how much nature provides out there if you go looking for it. We had wild grapes and we had wild plums and just about any kind of that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, Drake's he gets a semi-load of shavings in over there to bed with. I can remember what we bedded with. Do you? Either one of you remember what we bedded the crates with?
I thought straw.
Well, we did a little bit, but...
Yeah, Marquita was working as a bank.
Oh, that's
Marquita's
right.
my sister, yep.
And they would run paper through the shredder.
Yep.
And she'd bring it home to us, and we bedded with the shredded paper.
That's exactly right. I remember that well. And then, do you remember how we cleaned them? I'm sure you do, Mom.
Oh, yes, I do. I cleaned them with a hoe.
We cleaned them with a hoe. Well, actually, then, if you remember, we kicked the sows out.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't it twice a day?
Yeah.
And fed them outside, and then kind of, I think we cleaned of a morning, didn't we? And,
Yep.
And kind of a little different deal than what my son's got down here, but that's good,
No running water.
No running water. No, we kicked them out to a water. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No feeders. We fed them on the ground.
Fed them on the concrete. Just poured it out in the concrete. Yeah. And them old girls got used to it, didn't they?
Oh, they loved it.
You bet.
They waited for it.
I guess the thing that impressed our county extension director the most was we didn't have hog water. We had cattle water.
That's right.
So we built a big old platform that led them up to where they could go up and stand and drink out of the cattle water.
That's right. And that's right. I forgot about that. And still to the day, when Drake took over my old show barn over there, I think there's a cattle water with a platform around it that the sows drink out of. So at least I learned something from all this. Well, do you remember, Dad, do you remember at all what them things was bringing back then? Or
I think around 25 to maybe 35 cents, depending. The market fluctuated a lot.
Yeah.
But the thing of it was, it would go up a dime, go off a dime.
Yeah.
And go off a quarter, maybe. And there was not these big moves. And anytime you had a pickup load ready to go, why, you could run them in the back end. You either go to Hummiston Sale Barn or go to Clio at the hog market.
Yeah, Clio was before my time. You're right. But I just remember taking a lot of them to IBP over at Promise City and them guys sorting for weight. And boy, if they thought there was one that was just a half a pound under, what was it, 220 or 240 or whatever, boy, they's going to get you. And I can remember sweating all the way over there thinking, boy, I hope my eye was good. We didn't have any scales, to check them at home. But anyway, it was good times. And
what did you take them in?
Well,
surely not what we did.
I don't really know. I remember that old black 77 four-wheel drive pickup coming out of that building just south of your house with a whole load of them bouncing over ruts, a whole load of fat hogs one time. And that was the other thing that that I remember. If there was a chunk of concrete on our farm, there was fat hogs on it. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You tell them about your feeding floor.
Well, we had a 120-foot automated cattle feeding boat, and we finally wound up with junk tin from wrecked buildings and one thing and another, whatever we could find it. We managed to come up with 4 individual feedlots, feed pens for fat hogs.
Yeah, so what he did was just where the awning of the electric feed bunk was, he just took a stud wall straight down, divided that about 4 different times on the slope, and those were 4 different pens. I remember driving that tractor and grinder mixer down through there, and we didn't have much clearance, and spin that old auger around and fill those feeders underneath there, and it got us by, didn't it?
Yes, that's still the principle. I was visiting with a banker this week and was talking about things going on. His comment was, well, when you make a buck, you need to stash some of it away because you never know when you're going to need it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that is exactly right. The trouble is, it's hard to make a buck nowadays.
That's the problem.
Yeah. You brought up a point there. Let's go back and talk about our after we got foreclosed on. I had taken a job, my first job. My mind wasn't in college whatsoever. I had went through 1 year at Mizzou and about a half a year at Iowa State, and everything come unhinged. And I just went to my ag classes, and I didn't go to anything else, and decided that was money that I didn't need to spend. And so that fall, I took a job as an insurance inspector, and I traveled 6 counties, and I just happened to be going through Osceola, Iowa. And on the north side of Osceola, I seen something that said $300, and I stopped and looked at it, and it was a 1968, I believe, red Ford truck that I think had been an electrician's truck because it had the boxes on both sides. And I called the salesman, come out, and I said, how much you want for that? And he said $300. So I called Dad, and he said, we ain't got nothing. He said, you better buy that, or we better buy it. So we went up and got it, didn't we?
Yeah. When you think of a utility box, you got to realize that you only had about a 4-foot opening and actually way to haul anything in it other than the sides.
Yeah.
So actually, that's the way we hauled our first load of pigs to the sale barn. Whenever we got started over again with Lamona Farms, we had them all crammed in the center of that utility box.
These were feeder pigs?
Feeder pigs. And, of course, it got some attention.
There was always a big line at the Humison Sale Barn to unload cattle or whatever, and I'm sure that day that we debuted our 1968 Ford electrician's truck with pigs in the back, I bet there was the biggest crowd ever, probably.
Yeah. But with our ingenuity, we managed to dispose of the utility box, and the local blacksmith had an old used flatbed that
that's right.
he gave to me, and we mounted it on, and we baled them bales up with little round bales, and me and Mom go out every morning, and she'd drive and I'd pick them up.
Oh, that's right. And by little round bales, you mean little round bales.
I mean little round bales.
Yeah. That was an Alice. Was that an Alice?
Yeah, Alice Chalmers, a little round bale.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted one. I reckon that's the reason why they left it when they closed me out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, little did they know. Yeah, and if you want to see that same baler in operation, you can, or not that the exact same baler, but the same model, you can go to the Living History Farms in West Des Moines or Clive or wherever it's at, and it's a part of the farm show up there. So we literally lived the farm show down here in those times, but we got by, and I do remember that flatbed on that after you say that.
Yeah, it made quite a bit of difference.
Oh, it's a nice looking truck.
Yeah, well, when it's all you got to have pride in it. You know?
It had a heater.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, we better wrap this up a little bit here. I got to get into the actual podcast, but do you remember, we fed hogs for quite a while. Do you remember when or how or why we ended up getting out of them? Or
basically, Premium Standard Farms was originally known, came into
that's right,
our area.
About 20 miles south of us,
yeah. And they had like 5,000 sows and those things. And the next thing we knew, our market was closed. They no longer had a market, we'd have to haul direct to the packer.
That's right.
Get rid of them. So it wasn't worth the hassle.
And that wasn't necessarily Premium Standard Farms' fault. That was kind of the turn of the tide right there.
That was the trend going.
That was
that was actually about the beginning of corporate hog raising,
right,
in that respect.
Yeah, and if I remember right, things got on the market side of things got pretty rough, didn't they?
Oh yeah. Well, of course, that was actually nothing uncommon. You had your years up and your years down, but
right,
they was down. I think we was selling sows for 11 cents and that type of thing.
Yeah. And I remember in 1993, Grandpa Hook, when he was about your age, a little younger, he helped me build this barn that you guys see in my Snapchats here at the house. Actually, the one that I'm currently redoing the front on, and that was built with a farrowing house in the middle third and the fat floor in the end. And I remember putting the first group of sows in there, and the sow kill market went to 4 cents.
4 cents.
4 to 6 cents. I do remember that, depending on the condition of the sows. And that's when I said no mas, and loaded up all my hogs and switched that into show cattle for a number of years until my son comes along and changes her back. You know what? The best part of us building that barn in 1993 was? That was all the concrete we poured then. Because it was about a dime on the dollar to what it is now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's just as slow as it was today.
Yeah.
And, of course, we were big spenders again. We used cottonwood framing.
That's right. We had a guy that went to our church. He built trusses. We went to down at outside of Mercer, Missouri. I think DeMoss, was that their name?
I think so.
They had a sawmill out in the country, and we bought cottonwood, rough cut wood. That's what that building was built out of. And I tell you, still to the day, whenever I go to the Allard Lumber and I buy a fresh, new, clean, dimensional 2x4 that you don't have to worry about being thicker on one end than the other, it's just like Christmas for me. So, but the old building's still hanging in there, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Cottonwood's still standing.
Cottonwood's still standing. I still think back to, my goodness, what I put my poor old grandpa through at 82 years old. He was here virtually every day. Well, you're 84 now, so you know exactly how he would have felt. But we got her done. That's kind of what family does. Miss Shawn and I just got married there in 87, and I was wondering which direction to go in life, and definitely needed a barn to start custom breaking some cattle is what my way of thinking was, and that's what I did for years. But Grandpa dove in, you did too, and then the funny thing of it is I still got the selfie of when we finally redone that north end, and there was me and you and Drake all in there, three different generations. Yeah. You were helping at the same age Grandpa was helping me build it, so that's kind of the cool thing about our lifestyle.
Well, the moral of the story is this: if you find yourself down and out, look around and see what you got. It can always be used.
Yeah, it can. And well, in fact, that's kind of a trend now, kind of that refurbishing deal. It's become cool, and but it wasn't that cool at the time we had to do it. It was just out of necessity. So you said you'd been on this same old hillside here about 80 years. How many years? So you've been farming? What's that make? About 60 or? Yeah,
I started I ran my first crop when I was 14 years old.
When you were 14,
6 acres of corn.
Huh. And would you do it all over again, or would you just go to town and get you a job and just retire?
Oh no, I wouldn't give it up for nothing. It's a shame that there are more people can't do it today, because the pride of a kid in that day was to be able to do something big. If the first day you got to drive the tractor, you could tell all the boys down to school that you drove that B John Deere, and make them jealous as they could be. And the day that you turned you loose with that old team of horses in a one-row cultivator, you felt like he was a 30-year-old muscular man. So it was definitely a way of life, and that's something that has been forgotten when it was all turned over to corporate operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. Well, you got anything else to add, Rosie?
Oh, no. I just love the life we have, and I wouldn't give it up. I'd like to live here till I die, and we've enjoyed raising our 2 kids on it. The love of it is still there and still in our hearts.
Well, you bet. And the cool thing about that, about what you just said, is I got a 21-year-old son that goes step for step with this 84-year-old man every day.
Every day.
That is truly family family farming at its best. And I guess we better get on to the podcast. You probably got things to do, don't you, Marvin?
You bet.
Remind me to get that saw for you before you leave.
Okay.
I got to mow the yard.
Oh, you got to mow the yard again?
Yeah.
Well, you were mowing in the last podcast, so it must be about a week ago.
It was.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming up, and we'll jump right on into a new species and a younger generation talking about it.
You're listening to the Genuine JBH podcast. Now, here's your host, Jay Bradley Hook.
Well, all right, let me set you up for episode 3. We're kind of changing gears a little bit, going from the show cattle side of things, moving into a different species. And not only a different species, but a different generation of person being interviewed. We're going to back up to 24-year-old Blake Goss from Butler, Oklahoma. Well, I know what you're thinking already. You're thinking, how are you going to interview a 24-year-old kid about what he's done in life so far? That 24, that's young. Well, yes, it is. But considering that this young man has been chasing his dreams since he was an 8th grader, gives him about a decade of experience. And I'll guarantee you one thing. There's not very many people that's done it their entire life that has accomplished as much as this young man has by the age of 24. Well, people who genuinely love the livestock industry come in all ages. And the Genuine JBH podcast intends on eventually representing all of them. Well, I hope you enjoy the Genuine JBH podcast's inaugural representative from the show pig industry, Mr. Blake Goss.
You're listening to the Genuine JBH podcast, sponsored by Amos Welding, Voss Angus, Werning Cattle Company, Wilkerson Farms, Catalog Livestock Listing Service, powered by SteerBidder.com, and Custom Tees of Middle Georgia.
I got with me one of the young guns in the show pig industry. Started really, really young and absolutely smacked one out of the park. I think it's going to be very entertaining. I am so excited to have him here with me and kind of representing the sophomore class alive. Blake Goss, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Brad. How are you?
I'm ready to kind of get some track laid down here for our people to listen to and hopefully learn a little something, hopefully be entertained. And I'm going to back the music on out of here, and we are going to get started. Well, as I said earlier, I am here with Mr. Blake Goss of, what's your address, Blake?
Butler, Oklahoma.
Butler. It's over kind of by Leedy, Oklahoma. And you are how old?
I'm 24.
You're 24 years old. I'm just going to turn it over to you just a little bit to kind of explain about yourself. Tell me in terms of to people out there that have no idea even about the show pig industry or certainly about you. Let's just start at that level, if you would, please.
First and foremost, one of them that was very, very blessed into the livestock industry at a very young age. And with that being said, a lot of that goes to thanks to my grandparents. Rick Maloney used to be the head of the Hampshire Association and the Spots as well. And he instilled that in my mother, and then that passed on to us. My dad, Kent Goss, taught ag for 28 years, if you will, retired, and now he sells trailers for Supreme. My mom is still a teacher, Dana, and she would be, anybody can tell you, she's a big part of our success. I'm 24. I went to college at Redlands Community College and judged under the great Brandon Callis I'll always be thankful for.
Shout out to Callis, huh?
Oh, he's one of the best.
Yes, he is.
Not only evaluators, but humans. And then I went and judged for the one and only Blake Bloomberg, which was always eventful, always awesome. And we were very, very successful. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself by. And I was very thankful in that.
All right. So you are on a family farm here?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I after I graduated Oklahoma State University, came back to the farm. Ever since I was a kid, I can tell you that my teachers, when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, when they saw what is your dream job, and it said bore stud on it. And then a 2nd or 3rd grader explained what that meant. To tell you they changed the topic is very lightly stated. Funny. And so I've always wanted to come back to the farm. And when I got to do that, my dad was very stern about, we're going to have 10 elite sows. Mm-hmm. But when he told me that, he had 35, so I was a little bit concerned of really what he meant. And I'll be dang if a couple years after that, we cut down to 10 sows. And Brad, when we did that, we kept our 10 best ones and sold out the other 23, if you will. And when that happened, my favorite story about mating livestock would be when I think I was in 8th grade, would have been directly after we bought the boar called Bone Collector, which would have came from Carl Kent and Sons and Cody McClary out there in Texas. And after we bought that boar, that was my first butt chewing, because my parents were actually gone and I found a boar online. And Dad and I discussed, and he said, we don't need to worry about buying no boar. You don't need no boar for 10 sows. What he didn't know is we were buying that boar, and I was pretty set on it. And so after
and you're 8th grade?
I'm 8th grade.
Yeah.
And you can imagine my mother is pretty strict, but she knows that we have a passion for the livestock industry, but she wasn't real happy. And she was more frustrated, I think, with my father for letting me see the pig.
Do I dare ask what you give for him as an 8th grader?
I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me correct, it was $4,300. and at the time it was
hard to explain.
You better call somebody to own half of it. That was the first thing. And I did. Larry Byers, the guy that has 3 sows, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but we got to buy a boar." And from there, we called him Bone Collector, and we get him home and we're feeding him. And I will never forget this conversation at the dinner table. My dad went over to look at that prospect boar, and obviously I wasn't old enough to drive, and he did it so I couldn't see him. And he goes over there and he comes home, and I said, "Well, what'd he look like?" He said, "He looks like $100,000 boar." I said, "So not a bad deal." Now, did we sell him for $100,000? Absolutely not. But he was just saying, my dad is one that doesn't like to talk a bunch, and when he likes one, you better find a bus ride or something to go look at him. And when I saw him, I thought, it started with a butt chewing and it's going in with a kiss. Is what I thought.
Well, let me just interrupt you here, because that's why you're brought in. The story's really good, as you're going to find out. It's about to get a lot better. And this season of the Genuine JBH podcast is the semen industry. And go ahead and let's dive into that story.
My brother, Ty, which is very involved in our program, and the daily work him and my mother did when I was gone to college, I will forever be grateful for. And he got that boar out, and we used to have a feeding floor, and he walks that boar out. And as a young kid, I can't help it. I go all Brad Hook on him, and I pull out my phone, I start videoing. And when we videoed that boar, we put him on Facebook. We were advertising to sell semen. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. And Premium Blend Genetics at the time was not as big. I think, if I remember right, there were six boars that they had.
Premium Blend is in Indiana, a stud in Indiana.
Yes, sir.
For those of you who don't know.
Owned by Ted Laird and then his boys Jake Nolan and Mitchell. They see the video and they text us and they said, "Well, what do you want for the boar?" And I priced the boar, and I didn't hear from him for a week. And I thought, well, maybe he's not as good as what we think he is. And that week went up, Brad, and the text was, "We'll take him. We're headed to Oklahoma."
That's a dream come true, especially for an 8th grader.
It was unbelievable.
So once again, 8th grade, you'd have been 13, 12, 13?
14 probably, because I got held back. Couldn't read very good at the beginning.
That happens to the best of us. I still can't, so.
I'm pretty good at pedigrees, not real good at books.
You know what? There's a lot to that. That's a subject for a different day, but okay, go ahead.
And so then they buy that boar for $45,000 for 75% interest. We kept a quarter. We kept that quarter. Just I wanted to use that boar heavy, and how do you use a boar heavy, Brad, when you got 10 sows?
Yeah, exactly.
Is beyond me. So there was a sow in the very back pen that was 3rd in class at a county fair, and she was short-bodied and just had the right pieces, I thought, to make one. She comes into heat, and without telling my father what we're doing, I told Mom, we're breeding that one right there to Bone Collector. She lays down, and she has 4 pigs, 2 males, 2 gilts. Of that litter, the 2 gilts got shown. They had the extras, that of a show gilt maybe at that time was a bit frowned upon. Got called unique, but was very consistent 2nd or 3rd fared, and that's okay. I mean, had no complaints about that. Let me go back because so when we fared this litter, we used to have an older farrowing house for, I think it had 8 crates in it. We're ear notching this litter of pigs, and I can't find Bone Thug. And at the time, I didn't know it was Bone Thug. Well, him and his brother disappeared, and I looked at Mom. I thought, oh, you got to be kidding me. They're gone.
This is one of the 4 babies.
Yeah.
This is the one that really was sticking out at the time. Yeah.
And all I hear is squealing underneath the farrowing house.
Oh, no.
Fell through the cracks when we were ear notching. Had to use another pig to start squealing, so he'd run to that pig.
Oh, I've been there.
And after that happened, it was one of them joke deals that people that raise livestock, well, he's got a story. Something cool's going to happen.
Yep. And that is true. About 99% of the time, it's true, especially on those good ones.
It was from there that we weaned that pig, which was called Bone Thug. And Mike Fisher was the first one to ever see him. Mike is a very good friend of mine, and he had a boar called Warfare.
Yeah, and to those of you who don't know, Mike has been in the show pig deal for at least 2 decades, I know, and as Blake said, the Warfare boar was he was an industry changer.
Oh, unbelievable!
So anyway, Mike saw him. Go ahead.
Mike saw him, and when he left the house, he told my dad. He said, "I think that's a special one." He was the first one to ever see him, and we got that boar pig out on the grass and let Mike look at him. And when he left, he had them nice words to say. And
let me interrupt you. Guys like Mike, they don't just say that to stroke you.
Absolutely, it's not a feel good.
No, it's a matter of fact. That one is the real deal.
And when that happened, that we got the crew in from Premium Blend, and they purchased that boar from us. It was one of them times, Brad, that you always have memorable moments and things that you won't forget in this industry because we're blessed enough to be in it. But having 10 sows and having a boar of that nature, it was basically fueling the beast that we wanted to become, and more of what we wanted from Mom and Ty and I's perspective, because Dad wanted 10 sows. So, and nothing wrong with that. He just knew that it was time to cut it down and to make 10 elite ones that we could build back around.
And as a father looking in on this story, you don't want more than what you can do right.
Exactly.
And that's probably what your dad was trying to make sure didn't happen.
Yeah,
it did happen. Really.
And he was honestly looking out for us because it was obviously what we needed to do. I mean, imagine if we would have lost that gilt in the mix of things, we'd have never made it to that direction.
Exactly.
And so after that happened, they bought that boar $75,000 for 75% of him.
Oh my! And that's the pig that got lost underneath the farrowing house.
That is
still on the sow, and later becomes Bone Thug. Sells 3/4 interest for how much?
75,000.
75,000. And you're how old at this point?
Right then I would be a freshman or sophomore.
In high school.
And I'm not real good with remembering the years, but I will tell you, after they bought that boar, I was fortunate enough that Ted and the Premium Blend crew offered me a job.
Really?
So I took that job when I was a sophomore in high school. I do remember that. They would fly me to their boar stud, and we would look at boars, and I would help them there around the farm. Didn't go as much as I wanted to with sports and everything, but the time that I did get to go, probably one of the best experiences through my high school career, I would say, bar none, from a fact of being in a boar stud and seeing what it takes and how they operate, and seeing the specialty of it was owned by a family, and I thought that was very cool that the brothers.
Once again, they're in Indiana, right?
Yes, sir.
What is their? You remember their address? Or?
Rushville, I believe.
I've been there, and I really appreciate you bringing this into it because we're talking about all 4 species in this season of the semen industry here on the Genuine JBH, and the Laird's certainly one of the major players in the show pig industry. So go ahead and continue with your story there.
And when they did that, and then we would go to shows. We would go to shows and pick out boars, and I got to be a part of that. Obviously, they got the final say. They were the ones writing the checks, but just being a part of something of that nature was awesome. And in the following year, we then had 12 sows, if my memory serves me correctly. We bred a few to Bone Thug. We couldn't breed a bunch because the grandmother of Bone Thug was a square deal, and that square deal gilt is one that I won a lot of shows with when I showed her from Larry Moore, another huge player, just in helping molding me into the person I am today. He used to have about 150 Yorkshire sows, and I'll never forget going through his farrowing house, and she was on the 3rd pin on the left, and I said, Larry, I would enjoy to buy that gilt, and he was one of them. He would rather go broke by keeping gilts than get rich by selling them. A motto that unfortunately he taught me, and I've held on to it, and maybe it's not good, as you'll hear later what number we're up to at this point. So year 2 of having Bone Thug's mother, a major marketing point, we mated her to Monster Stick, which was a boar there. We kept a solid white boar prospect, and back then that was just rare. A lot of people now they enjoy having white crosses because they broke the division of crossbreds up into light crosses, and then in the southern parts we're all about Yorkshire qualifiers as long as they're solid white. So we thought we could use him. Did we ever think we would sell him? We wasn't really sure. And Premium Blend also bought that boar, and he was later known as Smoke Show.
Ah.
So, and then the year after that boar, now we're up to 15 sows.
Out of the same sow. Smoke Show's out of the same sow as Bone Thug.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, out of the same sow. She earned her keep.
Yeah.
And now we're up to 15 sows, and we're supposed to be 10. So the cool thing is every morning, every night, well, looks like you forgot to keep the 10 sow limit.
Every day.
As my dad was headed to teach school. And so after we broke the limit of 10, we got to 15, and we were very fortunate that year, and we raised 8 boars that next season.
Oh my. Oh my.
A changing point for our program would be an understatement.
And once again, you're how old at this point?
I would be a junior going into senior year.
Yeah. Yeah. Unbelievable. A lot of breeders do that, breed their entire life and don't get 8 in their entire life into studs, let alone 8 in one season.
And so we get them 8 boars and we sell to Premium Blend. And the problem is by now, after we sell them set of boars, we're not winning as much barrow shows. And so then we have to set back and change the mold of, okay, you have 15 sows. If you're selling 8 boars, how much sense does it make if you're wanting to win barrow shows to advertise them sows as barrow makers and not breeding hogs? We're going to have to do something. And so what we did is that we were even more critical on keeping boars. And that particular year, our color wasn't as barrow friendly. Or as boar friendly, excuse me. So it was more of barrow colors like blue, some chrome, and some white as well. So we started cutting them that year in terms of castration. And when we did that, we found that it was very good for our success and being able to sell to more customers, because now they didn't think we were just raising boars, keeping the gilts, and it was flowing like that. So in 2012, when we raised the Grand at the American Royal, that was one of them that...
Grand Barrow,
yes, sir. And that would have been originated back to a No Fair Warfare daughter, which would have been one of the daughters out of Bone Thug's mom. And so that was a major key for us is to know and when and how. And so and we'll jump ahead now to, we're supposed to have 10 sows. We're up 15 and we slowly creep to 20. Going into my senior year, we move schools. And so we move schools. So now we get to build a farm that, that dad's really good at designing, and he designed the buildings for us to put sows in and sell show pigs. But I've exceeded my limit of 10 sows. Now I'm at 20 and creeping on 25. And I can tell you now at 24 years of age, we have 51 sows bred.
Yeah, my.
It's one of them deals that an individual is hard to beat, a unit's hard to take down, and a family operation. And my standpoint of views is we were better when we were all facilitating. And at this number, Brad, it really it's not near as much as a lot of these guys that raise pigs do, but very critical on 51. I would rather sell 12 and keep 2 if there's only 2 that need to be kept.
Exactly.
And so that was a big moving point for us. And going forward, obviously, we have big dreams.
But as a father with a son who raises pigs who's slightly younger than you, I mean, how do you argue with success? I'm sure your dad was just kind of tongue-in-cheeking you on that. I see, you were up to 15 now or whatever. Whenever you're having as much success as that, I'm guessing you're probably doing all right with 50 head now too.
He says every day, I said, why do you not want me to have as many sows? He said, somebody's got to keep you to the ground level and keep your butt in gear.
That's exactly right.
What he says.
That's exactly right. That's a father's job right there. And you know what? You're lucky to have a father like that.
Well, and a guy that's been in it as long as he is not scared to share his opinion.
Yeah.
So So if he does like one, we're in business.
And that's, you know what you just said there is a lot about why I started this podcast. You don't have to be a jackass to people, but you don't have to leave them guessing what you're thinking either. And I've found in life, if they get offended by your honest opinion, then so be it. They needed to hear that. And we just need more of that in this world. We don't need to be mean, and we don't need to be corrupt, or we don't need to be evil, but we do need to be genuine.
Oh, I'm absolutely in agreement. If we're being honest, how can one get mad?
Exactly. Just tell me a little bit about, because this is about the semen industry. Tell me about the relationship that you have with the semen industry now as Blake Goss.
Yes, when I started going to college, I realized that I was going to be extremely busy with judging and needed to focus on that. So my time at Premium Blend was done at that point in junior college, and it had nothing to do with the career at Premium Blend. It was just a change of life, sure. and I was still trying to run a fast pace to create a business model. And at that time, I thought it was best if we just go with Goss Livestock at that point. And I think everybody's got to create their own business model. Any youngster that's listening that wants to raise livestock, it is important to find your own identity. And I say that lightly by telling you to think about what you want to do and what you want to accomplish and what kind of livestock you want to raise, whether it be you want to try to win every show in the country, you want to raise replacements or breeding animals. And I know a lot of people that they just do it to raise boars, or they just do it to raise bulls, Brad.
Exactly.
And for that, guess what? Power to them. Yeah. I hope they do unbelievable.
You have to do what you love.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
what you feel is right. And how many times have you seen somebody that everybody laughed at? Why in the world does he breed things like that? And all of a sudden the industry flips on its head and he's in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and 5 years later you're going, ooh.
Yeah. Why
I want some of that.
You're probably not old enough to see as much of it as I have in my 55 years, but it does happen. You know, if you are 100% sure about what you're doing with your program, whether it's goats, hogs, cattle, sheep, whatever, stick to your guns.
Absolutely. And the first boar my mom and dad ever raised was Cover Boy, which was bought by High Point. And then we didn't have a boar. We didn't raise a boar that we sold for a while. Then we sold a bunch, and then we decided it was time to try to win barrow shows. So we started castrating them. Ty was showing, we were selling to customers. So our business model was just changing. And I'll be honest with you, I kept LMT, which was a Kiss My Sock Son, which is the Heimer boar in Missouri. And I kept him, because I thought he was a piece that we needed. Was he well received by the public? Probably not. And it probably goes back to one of them deals you were just talking about of, what is Goss thinking? That thing is way too freaky looking from the side and not near practical enough. But it reflects back to some of them old school sows, and it was all about making the piece. And when I did that, I kind of liked doing that because it was handy for myself to, sows are coming in heat, we can artificial inseminate with a boar that's right there on our own property.
Exactly.
So it was handy, but it was handy with a purpose. I don't want people to think he was just some teaser boar.
Exactly. Let me go back to what you just said there. And that's part of, once again, why this podcast is going to exist. Young people want to succeed. Old people want to succeed. But you have to have direction in mind. So many people get hung up on pictures, especially in the bull industry. And I always said when I was promoting bulls, there's improvers and there's changers. And obviously, you're saying the exact same thing when you say that you were breeding for a piece. You just have to have a vision, don't you?
And sometimes your vision gets blurry.
Yeah, exactly.
On accident.
Yeah.
With the right purpose of mind.
Yes.
But with that purpose, I can promise you, if you believe in your own program and if it's something out of your key accessory of sows, just believe in yourself and do it.
Exactly. And I know you are this way also, but also when you go out on a limb like that, if that limb breaks and drops you on your head, you got to get up and scratch it and rub it till it quits hurting and say, yeah, that didn't work that time, but let me go this direction. Exactly right?
Yeah, that's why they made Neosporin.
Exactly. And sometimes it does get infected, doesn't it? But just going back to the breeder mentality, I'm not sure people have and I'm not being derogatory here, but I'm not sure that there's a lot of the mass that has a breeder mentality. I think they have a sensationalism mentality, and I think they want, Brad, what calves you seeing out there that looks good? Well, a lot of them are out of the same bull, but guess what? There's a lot of them out of that bull that don't look good. The people knew how to mate. Combine one package into another and analyze and visualize and have a little bit of luck. And then that doesn't matter whether it's sheep, goats, or what species it is.
Well, and that brings me, like, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is is when we kept LMT to keep the daughters, it was for a purpose. And my dad would tell me, and I will take this to the grave. Sometimes you're so far ahead, you think you're behind.
Exactly.
So if you're going to make a change and you're going to try to create the next piece, it may not fit in for a year or two.
Exactly.
But you got to stay on course and don't get bucked off the wagon trail, because it's liable to come back and be pretty good.
That's exactly right. Well, we've talked a lot about everything in the semen industry and this, that, and the other, but obviously what you get from the semen industry is progeny, and they have to be sold in order to afford the money to buy the semen. And so if we could for just a little bit, Blake, let's talk about how the marketing strategy of Goss Livestock, it is Goss Livestock, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, of Goss Livestock, since you were an 8th grader and buying Bone Collector, has evolved to your 24-year-old 50 sow herd. Can you elaborate a little bit on just your marketing strategies and tools?
Well, as a youngster, it was a lot of word of mouth and more live sales, to be honest with you. At the farm, we would have bid board sales, and people would come look, or we'd run them through a live sale. It's crazy because you would send litter sheets out with no pictures, and if people liked the sows, they would show up. And we did that, and as it changed, more and more got into let's take pictures, let's sell them online, and that was all good and dandy. The problem was when you get family and siblings, that's the biggest way to come to a fight. Mm-hmm. So it was great, and that the transition is good, but for the last 3 years, Kendall's been the big time marketer, and that's
Kendall.
honestly,
Let's go back. Kendall being
Kendall Reitzenstein, which I'm very lucky to call her my girlfriend, if you will. She's now the head coach at Colorado State University livestock judging team, and we met at Oklahoma State, and she is very good at marketing and ads and photography. She actually looks up to you a lot, Brad. I don't know if you know that, but
I love her. Yeah.
And so she started kind of taking over. It was more of she tells me what to do, and I just listen when it comes to marketing. And we've had more online sales probably in the last 3 years than I did my whole childhood.
I guess you are a perfect example of the evolution of sales going from the farm into the online deal. But you know what? There's one constant in marketing, and that, as I have mentioned numerous times, and I'm going to mention again, and that's how you treat your customers, and that's the relationships you form with your customers, and if you are a genuine person or not. And obviously there's not going to be anyone on this podcast that's not, and that's why you're sitting across from me right now, Blake. Just tell everybody a little bit about your relationship that you have gradually formed over the years with your customer base.
I think it's very important to be very personable, but more importantly, honesty. I can tell you that of the past 5 years or 4 years, I may add, that our customers that have bought pigs from us have either been contending bidders or they've owned one since.
Eventually you run out of age. When I was selling calves for years, you would get one family that you would start green, and you would get them there and they were winning, and then all of a sudden, well, we're done. We're too old, and boy, we had a good time. But you know what? Just as I heard in another podcast with Bob May talk about, the champion steers at Fort Worth and how the 3 generations of that family and his family, all have merged to create champions. You're going to find out, you're 24, I'm 55. You're going to find out when you're 55 that you're probably still going to be selling to these customers you were selling to younger, to their kids and grandkids for a number of years. You know why? Because you were genuine to them. And that's all when you buy livestock. That's all you can ask for. We have no control over anything but what they're going to do to themselves, basically. You agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
One last thing here, kind of closing out this, I think this has been a really, really good podcast. And one last thing, let's talk about the marketing side of your livestock with a brother showing, and not only showing, but winning. I've heard Bob May talk about whenever his kids started showing and how he just right up front told his people in Wisconsin that he'd sold to, we're still going to sell, and we'll still sell you one. Don't think we're not going to try and beat you. We'll help you try and beat us, but what kind of mentality did you actually take towards that in your marketing program with Ty showing?
Well, very upfront, like you just mentioned. I don't think there's anything to hide when you're genuine about your business and what you're doing. They knew that he was going to show. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, is another reason why I had to gain ground in terms of up and sound numbers and quality. Mm-hmm. I needed more options for our customers to pick through. With 10 sows, after you keep one in every litter or what do you know what I mean? You know how hard it is to raise an elite one.
Yep.
And so with that, I think sound numbers, they had to grow. We were just fortunate enough that to have enough and for Ty to be such a good team player, hey, it's okay if that one goes there.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of our customers. We got to take care of them.
Yep.
I got to mention that he is graduated. I mean, we are done.
Which is bittersweet.
Showing livestock. Yeah, it's crazy to think about because he...
Ty is how old?
He is 18.
18.
Be 19 in July. He had one of the great show careers. I mean, it smoked mine. It wasn't even close. And he did that because, first off, he knows. Second off, he wanted to win.
Exactly.
And he set himself up to be successful. He won the crossbred gilts at OYE, the purebred gilts at OYE, and he was reserve grand 2 years in a row Barra at OYE.
Come on. And OYE is one of, if not the largest pig shows. There 6,000 head maybe or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that there was 2,900 barrows or 3,000 barrows, and
just barrows.
We couldn't get over the hump. Boy, howdy, we tried hard though, and we got close.
Yeah.
But no, he had a great career, and I mentioned that because a lot of times we couldn't get into some live sales because he was showing because they thought that we kept them all from him. But going forward, he's going to be a big part of what we do, but it's going to involve selling them. And I'm sad that he's done, Brad, but I'm going to enjoy the ride of selling pigs and watching them perform for somebody else.
Yeah, it's called the future is what it's called. And
yes, sir.
Let me, in closing here with you, and once again, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with me. But in closing with you, I talk about my buddy that I grew up with quite a bit, Tracy Gretzka, and you said something there that made me revert back to those days. Tracy didn't win nothing when he was showing, but he loved it, and he kept trying to get better and trying to get better. Well, there was two sets of them kids, same parents, but two different age groups, and there was Troy and Sarah came after that, and guess who won a lot? Troy
I can only imagine.
You dang right, and that's the same thing with you and Ty. That's what family's about. That's what competition's about, and that's what that's just what the love of the livestock industry and just actually being good, genuine people is all about. And once again, I'm going to shut her down. Ty, I told you at the beginning of this deal I'd call you Ty, but Blake, once again, you've done a tremendous job, and you've set out a lot of things for your age group and younger and older, and I'm just going to be honest with you. There's a lot of guys my age or younger in their 40s scratching their head wondering how to get separated from the pack and how to be successful. And you've done it. You've done it ever since you were in 8th grade. And to me, it looks like the main thing you kept in mind was quality and the right mentality and not being afraid to, when one door slammed, to go through the one to the right.
It takes just as much money to feed a bad one as a good one.
Yes, it does.
And don't be scared to adapt and enjoy some change.
Exactly. All right, buddy.
Thank you. I respect you a great deal.
Well,
I appreciate you.
You bet. Well, once again, a big thanks to Blake Goss for kicking off a new species for the Genuine JBH podcast. And one thing he didn't mention in there when he mentioned judging for Oklahoma State was that him and Kendall were on the national champion collegiate judging team that year. So I will mention that for him, something to be extremely proud of. If you're wondering if he's still in the board game, the night before he sat down to do this podcast, he had just sold a new crossbred boar to SGI that he was extremely excited about. I can't wait till SGI kicks that boar loose to get a look at him. Well, I hope you enjoyed this change of species and change of generations. We're going to try and do some on goats and sheep too. The Genuine JBH podcast obviously is in its infancy stage, and I rely a lot on what I hear back from you guys via Snap, or you can drop us an email if you don't Snap, or leave a message on Facebook. Well, once again, I greatly appreciate our sponsors, and if you're a cattle enthusiast, please check out the Facebook pages of Voss Angus, Warning Cattle Company, steerbidder.com, where you'll find the new catalog livestock listing service. And if you happen to have invested in some cattle embryos that need the utmost of care, check out Wilkerson Farms Facebook page. Boy, that facility is remarkable. And if you remember back in the podcast when Blake was talking about Laird's being at Rushville, that's where old buddy Amos Welding is at. If you're looking to remodel your working facility, an old barn, barn or a new barn, or maybe even putting some pins in a trailer, give Amos Welding a call, check their Facebook page out. And then please don't forget our online apparel store managed by Custom Tees of Mid-Georgia. Todd down there is one great guy. If you have any questions while ordering online, his number is right at the bottom left of that page. Well, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Genuine JBH podcast. It helps us out in the iTunes ratings, and like our Facebook page at Genuine JBH Podcast.